Welcome to the Sharp Way Show. A little bit past 7 p.m. on the East Coast. So happy to have you with me this evening. You know, I'm talking this evening about a very interesting topic, particularly for libertarians. And that is, how do you find a balance in your police force, right? The vast majority of libertarians do not want to defund the police or end the police, but we do want reform, as do I and most people do. But it seems to be almost only two sides. One which says, no matter what, cops are perfect, they're all awesome, everything's great, or they're all evil, defund them, get rid of them. You've always heard me say the same thing. Cops are humans. That's what they are. We treat them as human beings, guys and gals trying to do the job to the best of their ability. If we have a bad environment, you're going to have worse cops. You have a better environment, you're going to have better cops, just like you're going to have better truck drivers, teachers, whatever the case may be. My father was in law enforcement, but my mother was also a convicted felon. So I've kind of seen both sides of this. So I wanted to bring aboard somebody who I thought would be willing to have a conversation about how do we find this. Another fellow New Yorker, I would say someone who's kind of an activist for the police force. He is an active duty law enforcement officer now. He is the man himself, Zeek Arkham. How are you, sir?
Hey, what's going on, man? Thanks for having me on. Thanks for this opportunity.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think for those of you who want to follow Zeek, you can follow him on Twitter. It's at Zeek Arkham. If you're listening to the podcast, that's ZeekArkham. And also you'll see on both YouTube and Facebook, all of his data is there if you want to check him out and see what he's doing. So I think the issue that I want to talk about that most of us are feeling, and I think that is, for most of us feeling in our neighborhoods, is shoplifting, which I don't know if shoplifting is something that the cops can actually help. I don't know if they can or can't, but I think we're feeling it in that some of the poorer communities, I grew up in the South Bronx, you know that environment, you start losing more and more stores because the stores are packing up because of shoplifting. You lose them in areas of Queens too. I now live in Queens, in those areas, but you don't want cops coming in, and you can't keep a cop in every store, right? It's impossible. But then is there something law enforcement can do about shoplifting, or is it just a cultural thing?
I think it's just a cultural thing. Honestly, you know, just to tell the truth, you know, I'm on Long Island now. Grew up in South Jamaica, Queens. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm very familiar with the atmosphere there. And, you know, out here on the island, there's I'm not going to say there's no shoplifting, but there's very little of it, you know. Okay. It's nowhere near where, you know, what I'm seeing happening in the city. And but basically in the city, they basically told you, hey, listen, we're not going to prosecute this unless it's over a certain amount, or we're not going to prosecute this because it's not on our radar. We're going to treat this like it's you know, like AOC said, you know, it's people looking for bread. Mm-hmm. You know, now I'm not familiar with anybody looking for bread in the Foot Locker. You know, I haven't been in the. I buy my sneakers online. You know, I'm not out there buying Jordans and all that. I'm older. But, you know, last time I went to a Foot Locker, I didn't see a single loaf of bread in there. But that's what they're treating it as. They're treating it as, oh, you know, people are just out there looking for bread. So we're going to ignore everything that we see going on here.
Let me touch that piece. And this is the thing that has bothered me. I do some consulting with criminal defense attorneys. And many of them tell me the same thing. They say, it's not the cops, it's the DA. That the DA is the one who basically sets the tone for the police force, right? If the DA is arrest everybody, then cops arrest everybody. If the DA is like, don't arrest anybody, then cops stop arresting people. Is the DA, is that true from your point of view? Does the DA have that much control, or is it really police chief or local precinct bosses? What do you think?
Well, from what I'm being told, you know, yeah, it's the DA. You know, the cops can go out there and make all the arrests they want. You know, they can go out there and arrest 1,000 shoplifters a day. If the DA is refusing to prosecute, or they're cutting them back loose out on the street, I mean, it's a revolving door system. Like I said, it's you know, the fallacy of, oh, they're just out there looking for bread. They just want something to eat. Oh, these are just poor people who want their next meal. But they're going into Dwayne Reed, and they're going into different drugstores. The CVS is out there, and they're stealing all kinds of stuff. Baby formula, all kinds of stuff, and they're stealing it to either resell it or just to hoard it for themselves. Like I said, this isn't the poor old person sitting somewhere. Like I said, looking for bread. This is crime happening. But the DAs aren't doing anything about it.
Isn't the idea though that the people who are doing it, it's almost like a business model, right? So I go into Dwayne Reed or whatever, Walgreens, wherever I'm going. I grab a bunch of products, wherever those are, I take them. And then I go 3 blocks down and I go into the subway and I sell them, right? And that's how I make my money. That is literally my job. That's what I do. And the argument is, and I'm sure you've heard this before, the argument is, look, there's no opportunities for these people. So this is how they take an opportunity to make money to pay their bills. You've heard this argument before, haven't you?
I've never heard that argument.
Oh, that's the one that I hear all the time. That's the argument I hear here in New York, that it's their business. It's how they do their business. They take it for free and then they sell it in the community. And then in their mind, they're almost like Robin Hood. Does that make sense? In their mind, they're like Robin Hood, stealing from the big evil Walgreens or CVS. And now they're selling it for a lesser price to the people in their community. And then they're taking the dollars themselves. So that's how they see it. I haven't heard the bread thing. I've heard that they feel like they're doing a Robin Hood. But my issue is, if that's true, let's take it as true. If that is true, then what's law enforcement's job? Is law enforcement's job to let it go? Is law enforcement's job to arrest the people selling it? Is law enforcement's job to arrest the people buying it? What's law enforcement's job here?
I don't think law enforcement has a job in it then. If these people are pulling their little Robin Hood act and they're going out and they're selling on the street, and the most law enforcement can do is happen to drive by and catch them, then the neighborhood's going to pay one way or another. Because when the CVS moves out of that neighborhood and goes someplace else, or the CVS is locking up everything, I put a picture on my Twitter page the other day. The CVS is locking everything behind a glass case, or they're just like we see in Chicago, they're just flat out moving out of the neighborhood. They're just saying, screw this, I'm not doing this anymore, I'm moving out of the neighborhood. Then the neighborhood pays. And as far as these people going out there stealing from the CVS and then going out there and trying to sell it for lower, I haven't seen that happening anywhere. They're either hoarding it or they're trying to sell it for just about as much as a CVS is selling it for.
Okay, so they're not actually selling it for less. They're selling it for the same.
No, or maybe they'll sell it for maybe $1 less or 50 cents less or something like that. But they're not. It's not like they're out there selling it for half price. They're directly undercutting the stores. Remember, there's a human greed element to that as well. So if they know that CVS is selling something for, let's say, $12, they're not going to go out there and sell it for $4. They're going to go out there and sell it for 10, maybe. Like I said, there's still the human greed element in there as well.
Got it. Okay. So then, with this in mind, people leaving, packing up, does it make sense for the community to somehow step up? That's I guess my worry is, if the community begins to suffer, as you say, which I think we see that happening all the time, right? Communities getting worse, community suffering. I think we see it all the time. Then what becomes the issue with things like, for example, community policing? Is that helpful? Have you ever had it in your career? I know you've been a police officer now, law enforcement officer now for over 15 years, to where community can step in and fill a gap, right? Where community can say, hey, let us do X or let us do Y, so that now it doesn't look like it's cops coming in, but it looks like it's us in our own community. Have you found that work?
I say that all the time. Long Island, the community steps up. The community steps up and says, hey, listen, this is what we're going to allow. This is not what we're going to allow. They're working with the police. They're telling the police, hey, listen, this is what we need you to do in order to make our community safe, in order to make our neighborhoods what we want them to be, in order to drive up our property values. This is what we want. We're going to work with you. This is a partnership. This is a team. I've said that over and over again. There's no reason why the people in South Jamaica, Queens, where I grew up, shouldn't be doing the same thing. How they can't do the same thing. Unfortunately, they're stuck in the victim mindset. They're too busy saying, "Oh, I'm oppressed. And it's the cops that are out here oppressing me. It's the cops that are out here doing this." And they'd rather turn the cameras on the cops or listen to people who say turn the cameras on the cops instead of turning those same cameras on the drug dealers and the gangbangers and the robbers and the thieves and everybody else. They're not going to the community council meetings and talking to the police and making their voices heard. So I've advocated for that for a long time. Yeah, go out there and make your own neighborhood safe. I mean, what do you think is going to happen once the CVS packs up and leaves? That building's going to sit empty for a while. Then all the crackheads start hanging out in front of there, or the drug dealers start hanging out in front of there. You know, now you have this building with 1,000 feet of store of that could be used to put money and taxes back into the neighborhood. That building's empty now. What do you think is going to happen? Look what happened in Detroit. People got up and moved and left. Everybody said, "Oh, Detroit can't fall. Detroit is never going to fall." Detroit has a whole bunch of abandoned buildings there now.
Yep.
That's what's going on in Detroit now. It's happening in Chicago. It's happening in San Francisco. So what do you think is going to, well, you know, history is not going to change. What do you think is going to happen when that CVS, when that Walgreens gets up and leaves? So people got to be smarter about this.
So let me ask two different pieces that just came up there. One was the idea of drug dealers. How do you feel about the idea of legalization of cannabis? And in general, what is your view? And then how New York did it? Do you have any view either way on those two issues?
Not really. You know, this is not going to be popular with some people. I don't see cannabis as this directly harmful drug. I don't see it as something that, you know, people have to be fearful of. I tend to disagree when people say it's a gateway drug, just because you know, sometimes if people are going to take other drugs other than cannabis, I don't think cannabis is the reason that they're going and moving on to other drugs. So, you know, I've never thought it was this terribly harmful drug that a lot of people make it out to be. With that said, I do believe that I do believe that there should be guidelines set so that you know, if you're walking down the street, someone's not blowing cannabis smoke in your face at every given corner. You know what I mean? I always liked how Amsterdam did it, where they have the cannabis bars and things like that, where you can go in there and smoke it and partake, you know, if you want to do it that way. But yeah, I've always disagreed with how, just any corner somebody could be sitting there blowing weed smoke in your face, especially if you just don't feel like smelling it.
Well, the thing that I've heard before is that most law enforcement officers actually don't want to be busting kids for weed. They'd rather be doing other things and dealing with other crimes. Is that true, or is that just the people who talk to me? Do you think most cops don't want to be busting kids for weed?
From a lot of the law enforcement I've talked to, they don't see it as like the pinnacle of why they join law enforcement. You know, I don't think, a lot of cops do say, yeah, I want to go out there and bust, the robbers, the rapists, the people out there beating up, old people and things like that. People out there abusing animals. I've never really talked to too many cops that are like, yeah, I want to go out there and write a summons to some kid smoking weed with his friends.
Right. That's what I figured. That's what I figured. I thought that was true. So let me then go to another piece you brought, which is cameras. Are you pro camera, anti camera, don't care? Where's your view on cameras? I think most people now, if I remember the last time I saw a poll on this, most Americans are for body cams on police officers. How do you feel about that?
I am very pro body camera for police officers. They've done studies before cameras and after cameras, and complaints have gone down with body cams. It holds everyone accountable. The camera is not going to lie. So if some woman is saying, "Oh, the cop did X, Y, and Z to me," and his body camera disproves that, I'm all for it. Hey, listen. On the same token, I've never endorsed any kind of police brutality. So if the cop is saying, "I did X, Y, and Z," and his body cam disproves that, hold that cop accountable. So like I said, I'm all for body cameras. What I'm not for is some perp using his camera to intimidate a cop. His phone camera to throw his camera in a cop's face and say, "Oh, I'm going to expose you. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that to you." I'm gonna, and now he's threatening the cop with that. And he's putting the camera. Listen, if you want to film a cop because you think you don't feel safe in that situation, go right ahead and do so. But there's a difference between putting your camera. Let's say you get pulled over, and hey, listen, there are cops that are in bad moods. They want to yell, they want to scream, and you don't feel safe in that situation. And you want to put your camera, let's say, on your dashboard, or you want to do something, put it to the side just to record the interaction. I am all for that. But there's a marked difference between doing that and then, we see some of these TikTok videos where the person is acting ignorant as hell, and they're escalating the situation with their phone camera, and the cop is doing everything they can to de-escalate the situation, and this person is yelling and screaming at the cop and being belligerent. That I've never endorsed as well. So listen, I'm all for accountability on all sides.
Got it. Okay, I get it. I think most people are for the cameras, but I agree. Once you start using that camera in an attempt to start trouble, that's as bad as any other tool. I completely agree. You shouldn't be starting trouble with your camera. I'm with you. Let me move to another piece, though, which I think for libertarians is a big deal. And for most people, I think we're in the minority here. Libertarians are 100% for the Second Amendment. They want average citizens to carry. We're very pro Second Amendment, allowing people to defend themselves. Most of Americans disagree with us. Most Americans want more gun control. Most Americans disagree. Two questions, if you don't mind. Your personal view on this, and then what do you think most law enforcement believes? Just your opinion. Yours, and what do you think most law enforcement believes?
I label myself as more of a conservatarian. And when it comes to Second Amendment, I am very pro Second Amendment. I've gone on record. Anybody that's been following me for a while on Twitter knows I've always said that the line in the sand for me will be if they ever say you have to go door to door and start confiscating firearms. That's the line in the sand for me. I'm not doing it. I'm not going to infringe upon someone's Second Amendment right. Do I believe that repeat felons should have access to firearms? No.
Okay.
Because if someone has shown that they can't handle a firearm, or they're going to use that firearm to go rob someone, or they're going to, and I'm talking about, this is, something that's proven, they're a repeat felon. They come out of jail. First thing they want to do is get a gun and go rob someone. That I'm not for. Listen, as law enforcement, I do take the oath to serve and protect personally. That's something I want to do. So if someone has shown that they can't handle a firearm, then I think that there should be provisions where they can't get to that firearm. But for every law-abiding citizen, I see no reason why they shouldn't be able to own a firearm. That's just my personal feeling.
Okay. Do you think most law enforcement would agree with you? Or think most law enforcement thinks differently?
Well, listen, most of us pro-gun Second Amendment law enforcement guys all hang out with each other because we all go shooting with each other. We all take trips and we all go out to the range together. We all, if we buy a new gun, the first thing we want to do is show it off to each other. So, I just about all of my friends, I think there's only one cop I know who really doesn't go out there and buy guns the way the rest of us do. But the overwhelming majority of the cops I hang out with and talk to and are friends with, and I hang out with off duty. They've been to my house. I've been to their house. We're all pro Second Amendment. They all feel the same way I feel. Like I said, with that provision, we all arrest criminals all day. We all have made gun arrests, and it's all from people who get those guns illegally and use those guns to go out there and victimize people. But that's also why I endorse the Second Amendment, because I feel the average citizen has to protect themselves against the quote unquote bad guys out there, or the quote unquote evildoers out there. You shouldn't be victimized by somebody with a gun or even with a knife or anything else like that without a means to protect yourself.
I got it. Okay. So let me do a little bit of admin if I could. Guys, if you're listening or watching right now, do me a favor, click that like button. I have to get past Al Gore. Algorithm. I got to get past the algorithms. So please do me a favor, click that like button. It does matter. Please do it. If you're watching this on Twitter, then please retweet this right now. Retweet it, let people see it. It really does matter. Also, if you happen to be watching on YouTube, you can super chat me if you want to on Larry Sharpe YouTube. That's also awesome if you want to. But no matter what, Someone is here. Zeek is here giving us some love. So show him some love and follow him on Twitter. Head over to Zeek Arkham over on Twitter. It's ZeeKarkham. Please do that. It does matter. That's why he's on. He's doing this. Let's show him some love in return. So let me, if I could, ask another, my personal opinion. There was a massive increase in crime in New York City specifically, but across many areas, but specifically in New York City in the year 2020, 2021, massive increase. I think this is heavily because of two things. One, because of lockdowns. The lockdowns put people away. A bunch of young men now couldn't go to school, couldn't go to work. And the gang leader said, "Thank you for recruiting my army." And they put them all into gangs, and then all this stuff is gang violence everywhere. That's what I saw as a big deal. Second piece, you got people who have mental illness, people who were homeless, who now couldn't get their drug, couldn't get their treatment, couldn't get what they needed, and now they're double, triply bad, hurting other people, doing bad stuff. I feel this was a self-inflicted wound. From your point of view, what do you think?
I agree. I said from the start, the lockdowns were an extremely bad idea. I said from the start. I've always said that. I've never endorsed them. I think one of the worst things this country has ever done is lock everyone down the way they did, especially for how long they did. You had the governments that lied to us and said, 15 days to flatten the curve. And then a year later, just about a year later, they were, we've almost got it under control. Just a couple more. Then you had people like Joe Biden saying, if you guys behave, we'll allow you to have more than 8 people at your barbecue. Yeah, guess what, Biden? I'm having as many people on my property as I want to go to my barbecue. And then you saw the lockdowns of the parks and the lockdowns of everything else. So yeah, I agree. I think that the lockdowns facilitated a lot of the crimes that are out there. I think that the lockdowns, like you said, people were out there now basically doing whatever they wanted. I speak to a lot of buddies of mine all over the country as far as how their cities handle the lockdowns, and in the more red cities or more red states where they weren't locked down as long, hey, listen, they didn't have much of a bounce in crime. They basically were able to go out there and continue what they were doing. But in a lot of the deep blue cities and the deep blue states, they're all facing an uptick. They all had difficulty with the lockdowns because, like you said, people were cooped up, they were cramped up. Excuse me, the mental people who needed help weren't able to go out there and get their fix. So now they're out there running around doing what they want to do. It was basically almost like the purge for a year, to a lesser degree. But I am not a Bill de Blasio fan. I cannot stand him. I hate what he did to my city. I make no apologies for saying that. I think that 9/11 was the worst thing to happen to New York, and Bill de Blasio is the second worst thing to happen to New York. And they elected him twice for some reason. Thank God I'm out here on Long Island where I didn't have to deal. I still had to deal with Cuomo's foolywang, but I promise I say the word foolywang to my followers on Twitter. So I got to throw that in there. I had to deal with Cuomo's foolywang, but thank God I didn't have to deal with de Blasio's. So
no fight on de Blasio. He was the worst mayor in New York City in my lifetime. I can't think of a worse mayor than de Blasio. He was terrible, and he had 2 terms. At least Dinkins only had 1. He actually had 2, which made it even worse.
Yeah,
I can't think of a worse one. I agree with you 100%. He was a terrible, terrible mayor without question. I struggle to find anything he did right. Like I would struggle, and I try to be good. Like I try to find something good on people. I try, and I'm struggling to find something good that he did. He was that bad of a mayor. I completely agree.
I got buddies that are still trying to clean up everything he did. I got buddies in in the city who are still feeling the De Blasio effect. So,
Yes.
yeah.
So let me then, if I could shift to stop and frisk. Stop and frisk. Most cops that I know, most law enforcement officers I know, not just even cops, I mean people who are in parole officers, corrections officers, anyone in law enforcement, almost all of them, it's think stop and frisk, great idea. We got to do it. It's the right answer. And most people that I meet think the opposite. Not a good idea. Don't do it. I feel like this one is a piece that is almost black and white in my view. Tell me how you feel about that and how do you see it?
Stop and frisk was actually stop. Well, it's actually called stop question frisk.
Okay.
Just because Terry in Ohio, they put more layers to it, so it's actually called stop question frisk. But I've spoken to a lot of cops in New York City, and they've all said it was a good idea. It was just implemented incorrectly.
Okay.
You know, and when I travel into the city and talk to some of the people in the residence where stop question frisk would actually be a benefit to them, they all endorse it. They're all like, "Hey, listen, you need to bring it back." But they either say one of two things. They either say, "But you need to stop and question everyone," or they say you need to tweak it a little bit to make it better. You know, listen, it was from what I've read about, from what I've seen, from all the people I've talked to, it was a great idea. It was ruined by people who weren't on the ground level. So if excuse me, can't speak. If they had a chance to bring it back, but they had people on the ground level say, okay, this is what we're going to do, but this is what we're not going to do. And this is what we're going to do, but we're not going to do. It would be a great crime fighting tool. I mean, listen, legally, with Terry versus Ohio, it's a legal stop for a lot of it. Like I said, though, it was implemented wrongly. It was abused. And if brought back the correct way, it would be good.
Okay. So let me go to the next thing that I think was very controversial, and I think has a similar, my thought process is similar, and that's bail reform. Most people in New York State, they believed that the idea of repairing bail was the right answer. And I agree with them. I think the concept is a good concept. You do want to make bail fairer. You don't want to punish poor people. I agree with that concept. But the way it was implemented and the actual law failed miserably. It was a terrible failure in how it actually was implemented. And one of the issues that I thought when it first happened, and it's going to be my view on this, I told people, don't worry, it's going to be okay. And the reason why it's going to be okay is judges aren't going to let these crazy people back out. They're going to say no. And when they say no, it'll go to appellate. There'll be decisions and rulings, and the judges will fix this bad law in the courts. Oh my God, was I wrong? I was 100% wrong on that. But that's what I honestly thought. I'm copping to what I said. That's what I said. I did say it. I was wrong on that. I thought that was going to happen. It didn't at all. What is your view on bail reform?
I don't think any of us thought it was going to be this bad. I don't think any of us thought it was. I mean, even like I said, even on the island, you're seeing people who were locked up back out in the street, and you're like, wait a minute, like this ain't cool. This ain't, it's nowhere near as bad as it is in New York City. But it's just it's a good concept. It's good in theory. Oh, okay, this is what's going to happen, and it's going to be more fair towards poorer people, and it's going to give everybody an equal shot at true justice, the true administration of justice. Sure, fine, well, and good. But like I said, you have to tweak it so that you don't have someone who is a bona fide menace to society back out in the street. A lot of these guys are back out in the street by the time, before the cop is even finished doing their paperwork.
Yes,
yeah, I've talked to tons of cops. I've talked to tons of cops that it's getting to the point where even the perps know. They're like, hey, listen, I'm gonna be out in the street. You're still gonna be here doing my paperwork. And I remember, I think about 3 weeks ago, I talked to a cop who said he was finishing up his paperwork. He had just signed off on his last deposition and was faxing it over or was emailing it over. And he looks up, and the person he had just finished arresting was back in the precinct picking up their property.
Wow.
So, and this wasn't a shoplifting charge. This was for something. This was I think he said it was like an assault charge. So something's got to be done because people don't feel safe, and they're not going to feel safe until they understand that the people who are being arrested are actually paying a penalty.
Well, the thought process I had was, if you just focus bail reform on first-time offenders, I think you solve a lot of the problems, right? To your point, if some guy's being arrested 4, 5, 6 times, what are you doing? Leave him in jail, right? But if it's his first time, look, there's a chance that some kid is doing something stupid with the wrong people. He gets arrested and realizes, what was I thinking? I thought I was super cool, super smart. No one's ever going to get me. That's what I thought. Now all of a sudden I got a mugshot. Okay, you know what? I'm out. I won't do it again. I think that does happen. So you focus it on the first-time offender. But if you got arrested and you getting arrested again, next week, next day, same day sometimes, you have not learned your lesson, right? I mean, it's obvious you have not learned your lesson. I feel like if you focus us on first-time offender, I feel like even cops could get behind that. Am I wrong on this?
No, I mean, how many times have you opened up the newspaper and it's some guy there, excuse me, and they're like, oh, yeah, he was arrested 36 times.
Yes.
Here's a guy, he knocked out grandma that was walking down a street in Chinatown. Oh, and by the way, he's been arrested 24 times. Like, at what point do you go, you know what? He hasn't learned his lesson. What's it going to take? Like, he kills somebody out in the street, and then they go, maybe we should keep this guy behind bars. Like, it doesn't work that way. So, I mean, listen, like it has to be tweaked. It has to be fixed because people don't feel safe. And the answer isn't, oh, well, just make the cops make more arrests because the cops are out there making the arrests. It's keeping them behind bars and actually administering justice. That's not happening.
So let me go to the more touchy subject of bad cops. As you heard me say earlier, I think if you have a worse environment, you have worse cops. You have better environment, you have better cops. I'm a person who always said the same thing. Cops are human beings. We should treat them as humans, trying to do the job the best of their ability. But there are bad cops. So how do we handle the bad cops, right? As you said, the cop who purposely is trying to hurt somebody, or in the case of certain individuals here or there, those who are actively, working to be bad guys, hurting people, taking their money. I grew up in the time where Serpico was a big deal in New York City when they were, corrupt cops who were basically joining the gangs and such. I know there isn't as bad as it was back then, but there are bad cops. How do we handle bad cops?
Let me just first of all say this because I get this question a lot, and I spend most of my time dispelling Hollywood when I answer this question.
Okay.
When you go into a police locker room, cops are just in there kind of just hanging out and talking to each other, right? We're all sitting in there talking to each other. It's not like the bad cops are all on one side, twirling their mustaches and going, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to shoot an unarmed black person. No, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to, shake down a store owner. They're not out there. Cops find out that there are other bad cops on their team or in their locker room the same way everyone else does. We read the newspaper and we go, oh shit, did you ever see Johnson doing this? No, I had no idea he was doing this. And we're all as confused as everyone else. It's not like the bad cops are sitting somewhere twirling their mustaches and all the good cops are hiding in the corner going, what are we going to do? You know what the number one source of information towards internal affairs is to catch these bad cops? It's other cops. It's other cops who the bad cops might have said, hey, listen, yeah, I'm going to go out here and do this. And that cop goes, that ain't cool. And then internal affairs gets a notification. A lot of times it's, hey, listen, I'm keeping this anonymous, but Johnson's out here doing this. And then internal affairs goes out there and follows up on it and starts making these bad cop arrests or suspending the bad cops or whatever they're out there doing. I always say, hey, listen, who do you think is out there arresting the bad cops? The bad cop fairy? No, it's other cops. How do they get this information? From other cops. There was a cop I worked with he was saying a couple things to me, and I went, you know what, man, that ain't cool. That ain't working out the way. And everybody goes, oh, was it a white cop? No, it was a black cop. It was a black cop who thought he could trust me because he and I used to work out, and then he said to me, hey, listen, I'm doing X, Y, and Z. And I went, no, that ain't cool, man. That ain't cool. So, I mean, it's not like the bad cops are out there, quote unquote, spoiling the bunch, because us good cops hate bad cops more than anyone, we hate them. We hate them with a passion. You know why? Because every time we go out there and try to do our part in the neighborhood, they all go, oh, but what about the bad cops? What about this guy? What about that guy? We hate them. We'd rather go out there and do our job and do what we want to do, why we took the job. But we can't, because the news likes boosting the bad cops and going, hey, look at what this cop did. Look at that. And they all go, hey, we told you, there's only so many good cops on the force. So, I mean, we hate them more than anyone. And we're working harder to get them off the force.
What about the image that the police unions protect all the bad cops, right? I hear it all the time. Oh, you can't touch a cop because the unions protect them. You can't touch a cop because the union protects all the bad cops. And then, he'll just go get a job someplace else and the union will protect him. Is that based on something real?
To my knowledge, the only thing the union does is make sure the cop gets a fair trial. That is quite literally all the union does. If the cop, and honestly, if the cop is out there doing something really horrible and really like really just tarnishing his shield, I've seen it before where the union says, we're not paying for your lawyer. We're not paying for your representation. We're washing our hands of this one. So the only thing, and this is I've talked to unions all across the country. I've got a couple of union reps from different police departments who follow me, and they've all said the exact same thing. The only thing we do, which is our legal obligation to the cop, is make sure he or she gets a fair trial. And that's it. We're not here to protect the cop. We're not here to say, you can't touch the cop. We're not here to hide or protect the cop. We don't have rubber rooms like the teachers unions do, where they do whatever they do in those rooms. All they want to do is make sure the cop gets a fair trial. And they look at all the facts, not just the facts that the news says, okay, we're going to say, we're going to put this out there, but we're not going to talk about that. We're going to put that. They look at all the facts and they say, you know what? All the city is going to do, all the prosecutor is going to do is take all the facts into account and then make sure that cop gets a fair trial. And if the cop gets fired, the union says, hey, listen, we did our best, and that's it.
So there's been a recent push to try to make police reform. And there's a presidential candidate now in the Libertarian Party. His name is Michael Tremont. He used to be a cop. He says that to have better cops, you have to have cultural training, cultural shift in police forces. Other people say, well, you need better training. You've said things like you need more mental toughness. Does that mean recruiting? What is the answer to minimize the bad cops? Do you have a view on that? Is it recruiting? Is it training? Is it culture change? Is it something else I'm missing?
Well, I mean, I always ask these people who say, oh, the cops need better training. What training do you suggest?
Well, I'm asking
well, to me, I always say, what training do you suggest? Because everybody says, oh, cops need better training. And then I say, well, what training do you suggest? And then 9 times out of 10, everything they suggest, cops are already doing. Okay. Oh, okay. You want bias training? Cops are already getting bias training. Oh, you want cops to live in their neighborhoods that they're patrolling. In a lot of places, they're already doing that. In a lot of big city departments, just for logistical reasons, they can't do that, or else they wouldn't have anyone. But more than likely, they're doing that. Oh, we want more minorities on the force. They're reaching out to minorities to get them on the force. So I always ask, what training do you think? I'm not asking you per se, but I always ask these people who say, cops need more training. Well, what training? Let me get your ideas. And then, I always tell them, well, cops are doing that. I mean, as far as when I say mental toughness from cops, I don't want cops who are entitled. I want cops that are going to go out there and do their jobs. I want cops that are going to go out there and they're not going to fall apart. I want cops that are going to go out there and remember their oaths. You know, I think when I say mental toughness, I think I was speaking to one thing specifically. I don't know if I was talking about in a broader sense, but yeah, you know, when I say mental toughness, I just mental toughness is something you can't teach. You know, if you can't teach, you have to be mentally tough. You know, I was a bouncer before I was a cop. I worked in a couple of fields where you had to be mentally tough. Now, I'm not saying all cops got to go out there and be bouncers. I'm not saying all cops got to go out there on some gorilla biscuits and go out there and you know, want to hem people up. But if someone's getting in your face and your feelings are hurt, I don't need cops that are going to go out there and put hands on somebody just because their feelings got hurt. You know, a cop needs to be able to go, you know what? I'll pick my battles. And this battle I can pick and I can win. And this battle I can pick and maybe I'll lose, but my point was made. And this battle, you know what? Maybe this battle ain't worth it.
Okay.
In a grander scheme of things. So I you know, that's what I was referring to when I say mentally tough. But
I had
for a lot of things that
from years ago that I worried that too many cops stay on a front line too long, particularly in cities. That's always been my concern. I learned that. I thought of that for two things. My father had a friend of his who went undercover back in the 70s. And he was literally in the front line for many years. I mean, probably 7, 8 years. He was frontline cop in the middle of stuff. And I felt like it broke him. He eventually took his own life. And I felt like that broke him. Now, I have no data to prove that. This is just my opinion, my feeling of seeing him. I feel like that broke him. And then I looked at my time in the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps has a policy, general rule that no Marine's supposed to be on a front line more than 15 months. It's rare they ever are. They're often less than that. But that's like the maximum, 15 months. Should there be some kind of internal rule to get cops kind of out of the front line every, 2 years, or I made that number up, whatever, certain period of time that they should just pull them off, get them behind a desk or get them doing something else that's not frontline. Do you think that's a good idea? Not valuable?
I think there's so much more to it.
Okay.
Because when you talk to cops whose city councils back them, when you talk to cops where their neighborhoods back them, when you talk to cops where, you know, like I said, out here on the island, where the community steps up and says, you know, we're partnering with our police force, and we're going to, you know, we want more accountability from the criminals than we do from the cops. Cops can last a while. You know, in red state, look at Florida, for example. When you have communities who are backing the cops, and when you have communities who support their police, when you have city councils, government agencies who support their cops and say, "Hey, listen, no, you're not gonna abuse our cops over and over and over and over again. We're gonna stand with our cops, and we're gonna make sure that our cops are okay and taken care of and protected." Cops can last a while. But then you have, like I said, these deep blue cities who almost encourage abuse towards cops, discounting the fact that cops are human beings, that cops wake up every day and you know, we have the same problems everybody else does. We're trying to get our kids off to school. We're trying to, you know, at least see our wives before they go to work. You know, we have our PTA meetings we go to. We have our parents teachers conferences we go to. You know, we have our bills we have to pay. We look at our fridge and see, do I need food for the week? You know, we're doing all the same things that everybody else is doing. And then we go to work and we're expected to take abuse for 8, 10, 12 hours. We're expected to, you know, everybody says de-escalation. We're expected to treat grown people, citizens, as, you know, civilians. You know, they can have their little temper tantrums and they can yell and scream and stomp their feet. Listen, my daughter is 8 years old, and I tell her now, you cannot have a tantrum. You cannot stomp your feet. If you have something to say to me, you can say so as a big girl. But then I go into, you know, you have a cop who goes into some of these neighborhoods, into Chicago, into LA County, into St. Louis, and people can sit and stomp their feet and yell and scream and throw tantrums, and cops have to sit and take that over and over and over again and be the adults in the room. Why don't you have some accountability from some of these people who are out there acting up and acting out? Because they're not just doing it to cops, they're doing it to everyone. So why don't you have accountability for them? Where's their de-escalation?
So let me move to another thing that's controversial also. That is the idea of cops having to keep liability insurance, just like doctors, lawyers, other professionals. It's a professional career, so cops should have liability insurance. And the argument I'm sure you've heard before is if a cop makes a mistake and screws up, well, now the city has to pay, or now the town has to pay, municipality has to pay. If the cop has liability insurance, well, then the insurance company has to pay. What are your views on that?
It's a flawed argument, because you have people who sue because they got arrested and didn't feel they should have been arrested, so they sued, and the city settles with them. The city doesn't fight the charge or fight the accusation. They just say, "Hey, listen, we'll give you 10 grand. You go away." These people will go, "Okay." I've talked to people who they said they've arrested legitimate criminals for doing legitimate criminal activity, and the criminals go, "You know what? I'm going to sue the city because I know the city will just pay, and it'll go away." Look at the what New York City is paying out now for the rioters during 2020.
Almost
a lot of them were engaged. Yeah, a lot of them were engaged in legitimate criminal activity. These were guys who were out there legitimately trying to, rob, like I said, Foot Lockers. Trying to rob different places, and they got arrested. So they say, "You know what? Hey, we're going to sue the city civilly." And the city, instead of fighting these individual lawsuits, said, "You know what? We're just going to settle." And there's no wrongdoing
So then isn't that actually an argument to have insurance then? Because then the city wouldn't settle, the insurance company would have to fight. And if the insurance company says it's BS, the insurance company has the lawyers and they would fight and say, "No, we're not giving you anything. We're an insurance company." Or the insurance company would say, "Oh no, we're in trouble," and they would pay. Wouldn't having the government out of it and having an insurance company in it, wouldn't that be fairer to both the city dwellers and even the police at the same time?
Okay, but then if I'm a cop and I have that in the back of my mind that my insurance premium is going to go up because of a frivolous lawsuit, I'm not doing anything. I'm sitting in the car for 8 hours.
Okay.
So
you think that would affect the police force?
Absolutely. If I'm a cop and I'm paying insurance because of the job, first of all, if I have to pay an extra bill because of my job, I'm not. You know what? I'm going to go do something else. Either I'm going to do something else besides being a cop, or I'm going to go to a state where I don't have to pay this insurance bill because of my job, because I took this profession. Doctors, when they have to pay their malpractice insurance, is because they messed up doing something that they were trained they were not trained to do. They made some sort of mistake. Okay, if I tear a muscle and I go to the doctor and the doctor makes a mistake putting my muscle back together, right? He steps outside of his training. He does something. Then he has to. His insurance, his malpractice insurance, steps up. Okay. I don't know the amount of frivolous lawsuits in regards to malpractice insurance, but with police work, there's a bunch of frivolous lawsuits because you're not dealing with people who are looking you in the eye and want just a square deal. You're dealing with a lot of criminals who understand, if I make this frivolous lawsuit and say, this happened to me, look at all the ambulance chases out there. If this person did this to you, you're entitled to compensation. And with police work, we're not dealing with the best elements out there. We're dealing with the worst elements out there. We're dealing with criminals who want to go out there and prey on the populace. So now if they know I can make this frivolous lawsuit against a cop and I get a $10,000, he's got to pay, his insurance is going to pay me $10,000. Either that, or how many lawyers do the insurance companies have to hire now to deal with all these extra lawsuits coming in? It's going to be a premium. They're going to wind up settling probably more than they wind up fighting the accusations. So now if I'm a cop and I say, A, I have to pay this extra bill because of my job, but B, my premiums are going to go up. or my payment's going to go up every time I put my hands on someone because everyone knows now there's going to be all these lawsuits coming in. You know what? You guys are on your own. I'm going to be a reactive law enforcement officer. So that means when you get robbed, I'm just going to show up and take the report. And that's it. I'm going to show up, I'm going to take the report, and I'm going to go right back inside my car.
Okay. Let me do some admin if I could again. Guys, if you're listening to this, it's interesting. You do me a favor, click that like button. I got to get past Al Gore. I got to get past the algorithms. I need to get past it. So please click that like button. Wherever you're watching, please go ahead and click the like button. If you happen to be watching on Twitter, do me a favor, retweet this right now. Retweeting does matter. If you are on Larry Sharpe YouTube, you can always super chat me if you want to. But no matter what, Zeek is sitting here giving us his honest opinion, telling us how he feels. So let's give him some love in return. Follow him on Twitter at Zeek Arkham on Twitter, ZeekArkham. So
I got the same handle on Instagram too. So if you want to follow me there, I'm on Instagram as well.
Yes, sorry. Also on Instagram. Yes, I apologize. Yes, also on Instagram. Please do that too. Absolutely. Let me grab a couple of comments. A bunch of people are popping up some comments. Anthony, he brings up a point that I think most people believe to be true. And you can hopefully maybe tell us how true this is. He says cops can't do their job with limited training that they receive. I've seen them arrest first auditors, I'm not sure what that means, for a policy with no law attached to it. I feel like a lot of people are worried that cops aren't trained well enough. And I think the example they use is like people like the Philando Castile issue in Florida, how that cop just pulled his gun and shot, how cops sometimes just do that thing. I feel like people believe that. Tell me how real that is.
As far as I've heard those arguments before too. Oh, cops only get this much training. Meanwhile, barbers get this much training.
Yep.
Most training that cops receive is out in the streets, only because you can't train in a classroom for what you're going to get out in the streets. So when you're in the academy, you're under controlled circumstances. You have, they're teaching you the law, they're getting you in shape, you're running around, you're in a classroom, you go to the range, things like that. But they can only teach you so much.
I think we lost.
Did you lose me?
Oh, yeah, you're back now. Good. Okay. The last thing.
I'm back?
Yep. The last thing you said was you can't train in the academy.
Well, you can train, but you only get so much training within the academy. You're in a classroom, you're running around, you're learning the law. They put you in controlled environment situations, but when you have to go out on the street to actually really learn the job. You have to go out. I think just about every department has an FTU program, a field training unit program, where you're out in the street and you're riding around with an experienced cop, and they're basically training you how to deal with real life elements out in the street. Those usually last 1 to 2. I've seen it into 5 years sometimes, where you're being watched by an experienced cop, and you're getting your sort of just rolling your sleeves up and getting your hands dirty. As far as what happened with Philando Castile, and listen, there are times when cops panic. Yep. I've seen all the videos for Philando Castile, and nothing has really been conclusive from what I've seen. But there are times when cops panic. There are times when cops don't get it right. Cops make mistakes. Do I endorse using those as learning experiences and training experiences? Unfortunately, sure. Do we wish cops could get it right all the time? Sure. But like I said, cops are human beings as well. There are times when I've been scared going out there and trying to do my job. You try not to panic, but listen, you're shitting the brick the entire time you're out there trying to get the situation under control. There are times when cops make mistakes. Listen, there are times when cops are hotheads and should calm down. I've told cops before on the street, yo, calm down. You're going to make this go sideways if you keep doing what you're doing. Calm down. And they've been butthurt for a while, but then they calm down. You take control of the scene. So I don't think it's
that if I get what you're saying that you can't do as much effective training in an academy, that it has to be more of it on the job. My worry is that probably could be done easily in most cities because they have larger budgets, more cops. My worry is you go to smaller towns where they may not have those budgets or those, police that can actually do training. Am I off on this?
I don't know of any department, even in small towns, where they just, put you in the academy for 6 months and then throw you out into the street to just,
Okay.
all of a sudden start being a cop. I don't know of any department, every department I know of. And listen, could it happen? Could it be? Sure. But I don't know of too many departments where, they just, 6 months and then, all right, have fun, go out there. Every department I know of does have a field training unit, or you at least have to ride around with an older, experienced cop, and he straightens you out.
Got it. Okay, I got it. So let me grab some more if I could here. Let's see here. Let me grab a couple. There's a lot of comments popping in here again. So I'm gonna grab a couple of them that make some sense here, that are clearer for this. Let's see here. Patty says, I went to an actual class on how to properly and peacefully protest. Thank you, Zeke. You are one of the officers I would shake hands with. And thank you for being understanding and protecting. You have a fan. See, there we go. You have a fan.
Thank you. Listen, I've told everybody, I treat everyone the way I want to be treated. I talk to people the way I want to be spoken to. So, I've already said my uniform doesn't make me tough. My uniform doesn't change who I am. So if I talk to people the same, no matter what rank I am, no matter if I'm wearing a uniform, no matter if I'm out of uniform, if I'm at a backyard barbecue, or if I'm at a protest, I talk to people the way I don't change how I talk. I don't change who I am. So, and I think a lot of cops need to remember that. Don't ever change who you are. You deal with people the way you want to be dealt with, and you remember who you were before you put the uniform on.
I have one question, and this one I get completely. Mike says, for Zeke, I see a lot of cops that don't look like they are physically fit. Could some of the abuse be due to cope, not being fit enough to subdue a suspect without unnecessary harm? And I see this too, and sadly, I see a lot of New York City cops really out of shape. And I don't mean like they don't go to the gym. I mean like they can hardly put their vest on. Like I see a lot, and around here, and it's not like it's most. I don't think it's most, but I think I would say probably 1 in 3 is overweight, if not like really overweight. So, do you have a view on this?
And here's where all the cops start turning on me.
Okay.
I've always said, hey, listen, I'm a gym rat. I'm a meathead. I'm a musclehead. I've worked out all my life. So it's something I personally believe in. I've always said, if I ever became the guy who was in charge of a major police department, whether it was New York, Chicago, LA, one of the first things I would do is implement a physical fitness program and say every cop has to pass a physical fitness program at least once a year. Whether you're doing an obstacle course, whether you do a 1.5 mile run, whether you do a push-up test, I would find a fair assessment of what I could have as far as, okay, you have to do, 30 push-ups and 30 sit-ups and then, run the 1.5 miles in this long. I would dedicate a day for all cops. You go there on job time, you pass your physical fitness test, the same way you have to pass your marksmanship test once a year. The same way that's what I would do. I would also give cops at least an hour of job. If they have to work a 10-hour tour, I would give them at least an hour to work out on tour. I would find the logistics of it and figure out a way I can do it, and have cops be physically fit. Just because and I say just for your own self-preservation, because when I worked in the hood, I saw guys doing chin-ups on don't walk signs. If they ever put scaffolding in front of a building, guaranteed there were guys who just got out of prison that were using the scaffolding to work out, or they would take over a playground and they're doing chin-ups on the monkey bars or the jungle gym or whatever kids play tools they got there. They're out there working out, and if you can't physically handcuff someone, if I send someone to go handcuff someone, hey, put the cuffs on him, and they physically just can't do it because they're just outmatched.
Yep.
That's a bad look for the department. So I've always said any cop who isn't physically fit to do the shot to do the job shouldn't be doing the job. You could be a great cop. Yeah, be a great cop, but get yourself in shape. I mean, and just for you, for your family, for your own protection, for the protection of your fellow cops.
Sure.
Be that guy where when you stand there, the criminals go, you know what? I don't know if I don't really want that kind of smoke with him.
Got it. Okay. So I appreciate you taking a bunch of comments and a bunch of questions and answering some tough questions. Is there anything that we should bring up before we wrap this up? Something you want to talk about? Something you want to bring up?
No, I would just say, hey, listen, just as I said before, cops are people too. I've been privileged to, my daughter plays with the children of cops. I've had cops over at my house. I've been to their house. They become your family. They're human beings as well. They have dreams and hopes and aspirations for the future. All of us talk about what we want to do after we retire. I've been privileged where a lot of cops follow me, and I get DMs from a lot of cops just thanking me for speaking and having a voice and being able to talk for them and being able to just share what it is to be a cop and just give everyone out there a piece of what it's like to do this for a living. And just remember, we give cops a little bit of leeway. And like I said, I'll never support a bad cop, but sometimes what you might think is a bad cop really is a cop just doing his job, because policing is an ugly job. It's a contact sport. And just because it might look bad on the surface doesn't mean it is.
There we go. All right, guys, I'll say thank you all. For those of you who are watching, I appreciate it. Good seeing you all. Thank you so much. And I will be on, not this Monday, I'll be on a Twitter space this Monday, so I will not be doing my Shortway show, but I will be doing my radio show on Tuesday at 1 p.m. I will see you all